Hi, today's video we're going to be talking about how you can improve the performance and the speed of a Windows 10 machine. So just quickly before we get started with the optimizations, why am I recording this video? The reason is I recently watched a number of YouTube videos and read some internet articles, all of them on the subject of improving Windows 10 performance and speed. And I was actually quite disappointed to find that some of the tips and techniques that they suggested in these wouldn't actually improve the performance or speed at all. Indeed, some of them might actually make the performance worse or potentially damage your machine in some way or make it less secure. So what I want to do is share some of the optimizations that I've found in the course of my career that I know will make a difference for you. I've been working with Windows since version 3.11, which is nearly 30 years ago, and I've also worked with Citrix technologies and end-user computing technologies since about 1999, so I've done quite a lot of Windows image optimizations in that time. So you can decide for yourself if I'm qualified to recommend these types of optimizations, but as I said, I'm going to give you a list of things that I'm pretty confident will improve your speed and performance. Before we get started with the optimizations, one very important point to make is before making any changes, you should always make sure that you take a restore point of your system. A full backup would be better, but not everybody can get a full backup done, but the system restore gives you a good way to allow you to roll back. So click on the start menu, type in system space restore. You get this option here that says create a restore point. Click on that, it will show you whether system restore is turned on or off on your drives. The one you're interested in is the system drive. You don't need it turned on any secondary drives like this F drive here, which is a data drive, unless you've redirected some system files there or something like that. So make sure it's turned on the drive that's marked as system. If it's not turned on, you can click on configure here and switch it on, make sure it's not disabled. You can also use this slider to adjust how much disk space it will actually use when you're using system restore. Now if you apply any of these optimizations and maybe some applications don't behave as you expect them to, or some hardware doesn't work properly, you can click on this button here that says system restore and it'll give you the option to restore it from an earlier point. But before you make any optimizations, always click on create here first, give it a name, click create, and you've got a restore point ready. Once that's done, as I said, if you get any problems after making the optimizations, simply click on system restore, click on next, and select the restore point that you want. It'll tell you the time when it's done, and it'll then roll it back and get rid of all the changes that you made. Now, let's get started with the optimizations to make our Windows 10 machine run as fast and as performant as possible. First one, remove all unneeded software from your machine. Click on the Start menu, click on the Settings button, which is the one shown here. In this dialog here, click on Apps here, and you get a list of all the software installed on your machine. Go through this list and make sure everything you've got is something that you need and that you use. Anything that you don't need or don't use or don't recognize, get rid of it. I'm looking through my list here. Most of this stuff is stuff that I use because I review this pretty regularly, as you should. However, there is one thing that I have on here that I know I don't use anymore. That's EndNote. So anything you don't use or don't recognize, uninstall it. Now, always make a note of what you're uninstalling, because if it turns out you did need it, you'll need to go and get it again and download it and reinstall it. And System Restore won't help you out there. It will restore some application settings, but possibly not all of them. It depends how the installer works. So always make a note of what you're installing prior to uninstalling it, and make sure you can still get a hold of the source files. So I know for sure that I don't need EndNote, so I'll uninstall it. It shall run through the uninstall process down here. Shouldn't take too long at all. It's now uninstalled from the machine. What you can also do is you can click on optional features at the top here and make sure there are no features that have been added to Windows that also you don't need. I know that everything in that list is okay. I've already checked it, so that's fine with me. But the first stage in optimization, go through your list of software, make a note of anything that you don't recognize or don't need or don't use anymore, and then uninstall it. Stage 2 in optimizing your Windows 10 to be as fast and as performant as possible is to go through your startup items and get rid of anything that doesn't need to be in there. This is probably one of the most important parts, to be honest, because if you've got things loading at startup that you don't need to load at startup, they're going to eat up your system resources. To look at your startup items, right click on the taskbar down at the bottom here, so you see this menu, and click where it says Task Manager. You'll get the Task Manager window up, which I'll just maximise over here. Look at these tabs across the top, and you'll see one that says Startup. This will tell you what's starting up automatically. Now what you need to do is also right click at the top here where the labels are, and also add Startup Type and Command Line into there, so you can see some of that extra detail. Now, to show you the name of what's starting up, the publisher, whether it's enabled or disabled. So if it's enabled, that means it's running at startup. Disabled means it's not. It gives you an estimate of how much impact it's having, tells you where it's coming from, which is usually the registry, and also the command line, which might be vital if you want to verify, what things are that are actually running at startup. Look through everything in this list and say to yourself, do these programs need to run automatically when I log onto Windows? If they do, leave them. If they don't, get rid of them. Now looking through this list, looking at the ones that are enabled, straight out and see here, Discord. I use Discord very rarely. I use it for looking at Slack archive histories. So that doesn't need to be running at startup. So if you've found something like that, right click on it and choose Disable, and it won't run at start anymore. You can see it's changed to disabled. Same with NordVPN. Sometimes use VPN for sort of simulating connections to other countries for testing. If I want to use NordVPN, I'll run NordVPN. I don't need it to be starting when my machine starts up, so right click on that one, choose Disable. Opera as well. Opera I use as an alternative browser sometimes when I'm doing testing. Don't need to run that at startup. Right click and choose Disable. However, there are things in here like Slack, for instance, and Teams and OneDrive. Now those are things that I want to be logged into automatically because I use them very regularly, so they can stay as enabled. So go through that entire list and have a look and see what you can get rid of. The more the better. Make sure that there are applications in there that you absolutely need to be running when you start up. Step 3 in improving the performance and the speed of your Windows 10 device is to have a look at the services that are running on the machine and get rid of any that you don't need. Services are kind of system level processes that start up when a machine boots, kind of separate from those startup items that we looked at originally. But as I said, applications can put things into there that don't need to be running at startup, so you can get rid of some of them and save on resources. To have a look at the services installed on your machine, if you click on the Start button and type in system space config, and you should get a shortcut here that says system configuration. Click on that and you will receive this screen that incidentally used to have a startup item, but it's now managed through Task Manager, and click on the tab that says Services. Now, it's very important that you don't go and disable any Microsoft services through here. So there's a little tick box at the bottom that you need to check that says Hide All Microsoft Services. And what you're left with is the non-Microsoft services that are running on your machine. Now, you need to have a look through this list and see if there's anything on there that you can get rid of, something that doesn't need to be running. And straight away, we've got things like Google updates and things like that, and the NordVPN service, which probably need to be running to support those applications. But I certainly know this one, the FreeMake Improver, which is a bit of software I use called FreeMake, occasionally for converting audio files. That sounds like some sort of call home functionality to me. So if you untick that, it will basically disable that from running at startup anymore. If you click apply, it will simply go through and do it, but it will also tell you that it needs a restart because the service itself needs to be restarted. So just click exit without restart for now. When you get a chance, reboot your machine, and this time the services that you've disabled in there that you don't need shouldn't be running and will have freed up some of your system's resources. Fourth stage in optimizing your Windows 10 machine for best performance is to do with virus checking. If you have a virus or any kind of malware on your machine, it will usually drastically affect the performance. Viruses do things in the background such as sending mass emails, storing files for miscreants on the internet, performing denial of service attacks. You want to get rid of these off your machine as much as possible. Now, there's lots of different antivirus out there. You may have one of the commercial variants out there, but there is also on all Windows 10 machines now shipped with Windows Defender, which should be good enough to do the job for everyone. But the thing to make sure is, make sure that a scheduled scan is being done. So if you type in Windows, well, start typing in Windows Defender, you'll get this option for Windows Security at the top. And click on that, you'll have an option here that says Virus and Threat Protection. What you need to do is, if you are experiencing performance issues, make sure you go in and do a scan, right, and do a full system scan. So if you're using Windows Defender, you have option here for scan options. Change that to full scan and choose scan now. Will take a while, but it'll make sure it gets rid of any viruses or malware on your machine that may potentially be affecting performance. You also need to make sure that it's also doing a scan at least once or twice a week. Now, Windows Defender runs only when your machine is idle, so it should never interfere with your gaming or anything like that. If you do have any different antivirus products other than Windows Defender, you'll need to look up and see if they've got like a gaming mode that allows you to turn off the antivirus when you're playing games, because obviously you don't want the antivirus scan running when you're running a first-person shooter or something like that, because it will drastically affect the performance of your machine. If you look at this article here, which the link is posted up there on the screen, it'll give you, for some of the bigger sort of antiviruses out there, how to turn on the gaming profiles and the silent modes so that the antivirus scans don't affect your performance. Having said that, if you're using Windows Defender, it shouldn't jump in when you're doing anything. It should only run when idle. So there you go. Number 4, always make sure the antivirus scans are being done, and if you're experiencing any performance problems, go and do an antivirus scan as soon as possible and get rid of any potential malware on your machine. For stage 5 of Windows 10 optimization, let's talk very quickly about power plans and performance optimization options. Firstly, with regard to power plans, if you click on the start menu over here and start typing in the word power, and it's not PowerPoint you're interested in, if you've got there, it's actually the one underneath that says power and sleep settings. So you'll be brought into this screen here. You then over on the right hand side have something that says additional power settings. If you click on that, you will get an option for different power plans that are on your machine. Now, I've got one called JRR, which is a customized power plan I created myself, but really, if you're interested in the best performance for your machine, you should be selecting this one here that says high performance. Obviously, may use more energy, so if you're a laptop user and concerned about battery life, this probably isn't what you want to be doing. If you want to get the best performance from Windows 10, always switch that to high performance. Now, there's also some other little performance options you can go into as well. If you type into the start menu, search advanced, will do it. It should come up with view advanced system settings. If you click on that, there's this little box here that says performance. If you click on settings there, you get the option to adjust for best appearance or adjust for best performance. If you want the best performance, then click on adjust for best performance. You notice it turns off all of these visual effects, so you may find that makes it aesthetically unpleasant for you, so you might want to turn some of them back on. But if you're after the best possible performance, then always leave that as adjusted for best performance in there as well. Now, you've also got on this advanced tab here, if you switch along to the advanced tab, make sure as well where it says processor scheduling that you're always adjusted for best performance of programs rather than background services. So it shouldn't be set to background services, should always be set to programs. Background services option is more for kind of a server type of sort of installation, which you commonly wouldn't be doing at all on a Windows platform. And just finally, around these advanced options, it's worth calling your sort of attention to this bit here that says virtual memory. I've seen some guides that suggest going in and changing virtual memory settings in here. Don't do that. You will probably cause yourself more problems than you actually solve. Unless you're specifically having a particular issue that's down to excessive paging, then don't change this at all and always leave it set to automatically manage paging file size for all drives. Let Windows manage virtual memory. You don't need to get into that yourself. So as I said, adjust those settings for your power options and your performance options so that it's set for the best performance possible. let's move on now to our 6th stage of Windows 10 optimization. And let's talk briefly about checking your hardware status, particularly things like your memory, your RAM, and your disks as well, which is your storage. Now obviously if you get any sort of hardware failure, it's going to impact your performance very badly, so we need to identify if that is the issue. Now first of all, let's talk about memory, let's talk about RAM. So if you click on the start menu and type in system space info, you'll get the option here that says system information. If you go to the system information screen, one thing I found handy to do that I've seen happen a couple of times is make sure the amount of memory that you think you've got in your machine matches up to what it says here. As you can see, it says installed physical memory 128 gig. That's how much I have in this machine, so I know that's okay. I have seen instances in the past where the amount that people think they have in the machine doesn't match what's displayed here, which obviously indicated some sort of fault. So that's a good first check to have. If you're experiencing performance and you suspect memory may be to blame, or if you just want to check the memory to make sure everything's in good performant working order, click on start menu and start typing in memory, and you'll get an option here that says Windows Memory Diagnostic. If you click on this application, you'll get two options. You'll get one that says restart now and check for problems, which will do it straight away. You also get one that says check for problems the next time I start my computer, which will schedule it for the next time you do a reboot. One thing to be aware of, especially if you've got a lot of memory like I have, this will take quite a long time to complete. So bear in mind, don't do what I did and expect it to be finished in an hour and you can then use your machine. It's not like that. It will take a very long time, especially if you've got lots of memory, so make sure you allocate sufficient time. If the memory diagnostic finds any errors, really your best option is to take it to a hardware dealer who can check that the memory is seated properly and whether it hasn't gone bad and maybe needs replacing. But this diagnostic tool will tell you if you've got any problems like that. Now, with regard to your disks, there are various ways you can have a look at the status of these. One of the best ones I find, if you click on the start menu and type CMD, you'll get the option to run the command prompt here. If you run that and type in the command, if I can remember it correctly, is WMIC space disk drive space get space status, I think is the correct command. And it'll go through and check the status of the disk drives you've got attached to the machine. As you can see here, it's showing that mine are all showing as okay. If you find like that you need to check the disks, or if it is showing as a status of not okay, if you click on the start menu and start typing in this space PC, you'll get the this PC app. In here you can see your drives are listed in here. Choose whichever one it is you want to check, right click on it, go to properties. You see in this dialog you have a tab that says Tools. Click on Tools, you have an error checking option, click on Check. It's telling us here that we don't need to scan this drive because it doesn't think there's any errors on it. You can scan it again if you want to, and it'll see if there are any errors on there. And as I said, repeat this for all of the disk drives in your system. Run a disk check and see if it finds any errors. Again, if it does find errors on there, you may need to get the hardware professionally checked to make sure that it's in good health. Now, there's another thing that people often do and often recommend is that hard drives are defragmented. Now, if you type into the start menu defrag and you get this option here that says defragment and optimize drives, it's actually interesting here to call out as well to see what type of hard drives you've got. You can see my system drive is a solid state drive and my data drive is a hard disk drive. Now, if your system drive is a hard disk drive, an old kind of spinning disk, it will increase your performance greatly if you replace that with a solid state drive. That's probably one of the biggest things you can do to actually increase system performance, is to switch your system disk to a solid state drive. So that's another good tip. Obviously it would involve you going out and spending some money, but solid state drives, much faster, much better performing. In fact, Windows 10 was designed with solid state drives in mind. But getting off the subject slightly, there is this button here that says Optimize, which performs a defragmentation of your drive, which can improve your performance. Now, defragmentation can happen on solid state drives as well as hard disk drives. Not as much, but it can happen. But if you look here, it says 0% fragmented. If that figure was quite high, you could then click on Optimize and it would perform a defragmentation of whichever drive it was. However, for a long time now, Windows has managed defragmentation itself, and it should do it on a weekly basis for you. So there should really be no need to do anything other than check to make sure that the fragmentation levels aren't showing up as excessively high in there. You can do it in there as well. You can also click on Change Settings if you want to change how the optimization schedule works as well. But the standard Windows weekly default, as long as it's turned on, should be good enough for you. So there's some tips on how to manage the hardware in your system, the disk drives and the memory as well. Get that all checked and make sure that they're performing at their optimal levels. Our seventh stage of Windows 10 optimization, we're going to talk briefly about temporary files and the importance of cleaning these out. Now, on any Windows machine, the system and the user profile both have to spit out lots of temporary files, but these can often accumulate over time and potentially affect your performance slightly as well. So if you right click on the start menu this time and choose the run command, into this box here you need to type %temp%. This will take you via an environment variable to the user's temporary area. Click OK there, and you can see in this folder here we've got a lot of stuff, and this is for the user session in use. If you use the keystroke Control A, which will, highlight everything in that folder, and then you can right click it once it's all highlighted and choose the delete function. Now bear in mind that because this is the current user sort of profile, some of the files, like you see here, may be in use and can't be deleted. The fact that I'm making a recording is probably why these temp files can't be deleted. If this happens, click on the bit that says do this for all current items and click on skip. If it asks you for any admin permission to get rid of something, you can do that as well. But you may find that in some cases like this, the files are locked in use. You can't do it, so simply click on skip instead. Once that's completed, it hasn't deleted everything out of that folder, but it's deleted quite a lot, as you can tell. So we've trimmed down the user temp files in there to the minimum possible amount, and that should help improve your performance. Now, I also mentioned that there is a system temp area. So if you right click on the start menu again, choose run, and this time type in C:\Windows\temp and go for that. You may get a warning here that asks you for admin permission to give yourself access to it. Obviously I've already done it, but literally just repeat the same thing again. Control A to highlight everything, right click the highlighted files, choose delete option from there, and again some of them won't be able to be deleted, so simply skip past those, and you can see we've greatly reduced the amount of temp files in there. It's not something that you need to do every single day by any stroke of the imagination, but maybe every couple of weeks go in and clear out all of those temp files to keep your system in good working order. Now, also around things like temp files, I've also seen people in the past suggesting that you should clear out things like the prefetch folder. If you right click on start, click run and type in the word prefetch there, it will take you into this folder here that you'll have to give yourself access to. I've seen people suggest clearing this out. I don't think this is a good idea. The Windows prefetch folder essentially kind of loads things up in advance so that when you try and access them, they will load into memory faster. So by clearing out the prefetch folder, you're forcing Windows to do all that prefetching again, and you're kind of negatively impacting your performance as well. So don't delete anything from the prefetch folder. Now if you go back one level up here, if you click on the Windows directory and scroll down through this list of folders here, there's also a folder here called WinSXS. I've seen people in the past also suggesting to clear this out. You can clear this out if you want to, but mainly just for saving disk space. Generally, I wouldn't recommend doing this either. I will show you a few more advanced tricks towards the end that will suggest ways of clearing this out. But generally, if you're looking at improving performance, deleting things from the WinSXS folder or the prefetch folder shouldn't really be a consideration. So don't do either of those things. But by all means, make sure you keep all those temporary files cleared out at least every couple of weeks, and your system will be in good health. Stage 8, talking about optimizing performance for Windows 10, let's talk about updates. This is another bit of a prickly subject. I've seen lots of people suggesting you can improve performance by disabling Windows updates and things like that. This is, in my opinion, a really silly idea. I know people are terrified that things will break and that Microsoft is spying on them and things like that. However, you don't turn off Windows updates, you're making yourself insecure and vulnerable. But not only that, when Microsoft do put out things like driver updates and performance updates that actually improve the performance of your system, you're going to miss out on all of those. So really, as a rule, you should perform all of your updates as quickly and as sort of cleanly as possible. Click on the Start menu, type in Update, you get Check for Updates there. Make sure you check for updates, and if there's anything new available, get it installed. You will see there I don't have any sort of intermediate updates in there. I do have a feature update to Windows 10 available, which I should download and install pretty soon. Bear in mind, when you get what's called a feature update, that's actually a full operating system upgrade. So maybe be a bit more careful with how you schedule that in terms of disruption. But these things should all automatically take restore points before they apply, so you can easily roll back if there's a problem. But particularly for a feature update, maybe doing something prudent like taking a copy of your data onto a USB hard disk or something like that might be a good idea, just in case there's a disaster. But please, leave your updates turned on and apply them regularly, because it will improve the health, the performance, and also the security of your system. Now, most of your other software generally is clever enough these days to update itself. So for instance, when I launch Camtasia, if there's a newer version, it'll tell me and I'll go and install it and things like that. But some applications you might want to go into and check for updates from within the app itself. For instance, on the Start menu here, I have Adobe Acrobat Reader. If you go into here, and I think if you click on Help, there's a check for updates option in there, and you can check for the latest updates. There used to be a great piece of software called Personal Software Inspector that would do all of this stuff for you, but unfortunately they don't make it anymore, so you'll have to rely on the update functions within these apps. Maybe you might even have to go to a website, check what the latest available version is. But by getting the latest versions, you get the latest bug fixes and the latest performance enhancements and security enhancements as well. So please, I can't stress this enough, stay on top of your updates, don't turn them off, make sure they all get applied in a timely fashion. For the next set of tips, let's talk about how to optimize our internet browsing, because on a lot of PCs that is what you will do a lot of. You know, on Windows 10 you'll be using your internet browser to go to sites quite a lot of the time, and getting the performance right is absolutely vital. I'm going to talk about this from the perspective of using Google Chrome, because it is the most popular browser out there by quite a way. Now, Internet Explorer I think is going to the dustbin of history. Microsoft Edge is going the same way too, although we do have Edge Chromium coming along, and obviously there are some users out there using things like Firefox and Opera. I'm going to talk specifically about Chrome because that's the one that I see most of out there. Some of these tips probably could easily be applied to the likes of Firefox and Edge Chromium as well though. Now, the first point I'm going to make is a specifically Google Chrome thing, and that's to disable what's called the Google Software Reporter tool that runs as part of Chrome and basically reports on all your software usage and tells Google what you're using, which is a bit odd, really, and it obviously uses up performance cycles on your machine. So to stop this, if you click on the Start menu and type in %local app data %/Google, and then just click on the link that you get there. It'll take you into here. If you then go into the Chrome folder there, into the user data subfolder, you'll see a folder here called SW Reporter. Go into there, and if you see any subfolders under here, that means the software reporter is on your machine. Now, it will come back as soon as Chrome updates, unless you're using the enterprise version. So to stop it, if you right click on this folder, choose Properties. You may have multiple folders in here, so do it on all of them. Choose Properties, click on Security, click on the Edit tab, and simply for each user or group that appears in here, click on Remove. If you get that error here that's saying it's inheriting permissions, you first of all need to click on Advanced, and click on disable inheritance and convert permissions there, and then go back to edit again and try the remove again. So remove all of the users on there, and it says no users and groups have permissions to access this object. That is what you want. Click on OK, you'll get a warning, and then you're done. Now the software reporter tool can't run anymore and steal any more of your sort of resources from that machine, so it should perform better when you're internet browsing. Now, to show you the other things in Chrome that we can use for optimizations, I'm going to switch to a virtual version of Windows 10 because my version of Chrome I've got installed here is quite heavily customized. So here is a virtual machine running a vanilla version of Windows 10 and a vanilla version of Google Chrome that we've just installed. First thing you can do, if you open Chrome up and go to the Chrome Web Store by simply typing it into the search bar, is install a couple of extensions that should improve our performance. The first one that I always recommend is called uBlock Origin. So search for that, click on the button that says Add to Chrome and click on Add Extension. You've now added the uBlock Origin extension. And do a search as well, something I always tend, there you go, if I can type it in. It's called the Great Suspender, which suspends inactive tabs. Click on Add to Chrome, click on Add Extension, and that should be done in there as well. Now, the Great Suspender immediately comes up and gives you a chance to configure it, so you can suspend tabs after every 20 seconds of inactivity if you want, but I find half an hour or an hour is usually best. You can usually go with the defaults and get good performance. As I said, if you've got lots of tabs open and you're not using any of them, they're inactive, it'll suspend them and free up the resources in there. Now, uBlock Origin basically blocks lots of ads and content delivery networks, which can often have malware on it and things like that, but anything that kind of like autoplays adverts, does roll on, roll off adverts, you know, sort of pop-ups and pop-unders, will all be blocked by uBlock Origin. If we go to a website like YouTube, for instance, we should see, if we go to uBlock Origin over here, the big blue button indicates that it's turned on and it's showing you that it's blocking things on this page as well. So if you go to YouTube now, click on there, have a look at the uBlock Origin settings, and it's starting to block things. Now, if you do get a website that doesn't display properly when you've got uBlock Origin turned on, or maybe, these are the worst ones, pops up a message saying because you're using an ad blocker you can't browse the site. I hate those sites, but all you need to do when you're on the site is just click the blue button there to turn it off and then refresh your screen, and it'll temporarily turn it off for that particular site. But it should really decrease the amount of CPU and memory that is used when you're browsing the internet, particularly sites, you know, like big sort of multimedia sites like IGN or things like, you know, the Register. I've noticed those have a lot of ads on there, a lot of banner ads that can slow you down. uBlock will block most of them and basically improve your browser performance all round. So get those two things installed, they should improve your performance. Now, if you go into settings in Chrome as well, there are a few tweaks that you can do that might be able to sort of improve things for you. Go into the Chrome settings, click on Advanced and click on System, and it's these two settings here that we're interested in. First one says continue running background apps when Google Chrome is closed. These are normally turned on by default, but make sure that continue running background apps when Google Chrome is closed is switched to off. The reason it does that is to ensure that Chrome starts up faster next time and reloads all of your tabs. However, if you want the best performance, I would always have that setting turned off. So have it turned off as it is here. Now, use hardware acceleration when available is another one that can improve your performance, but it depends whether you've got a GPU in your machine or not. If you don't have a GPU, then turn it off and your performance will be better. However, if you do have a GPU, so if you do have a dedicated video card like an NVIDIA or a Radeon or something like that, make sure you leave that turned on. So get those two correct. Make sure you turn off the background apps, but you only turn the hardware acceleration off if you don't have a GPU. So there you go, there's a bunch of settings there that should improve your browser performance. Turn off that software reporter tool by blocking access to it. Install uBlock Origin and the Great Suspender. Turn off the background apps option in Chrome and turn the hardware acceleration off only if you don't have a dedicated graphics processing unit. So for part 10 of this optimization piece, we will now quickly discuss about a Windows feature called ReadyBoost. ReadyBoost was introduced in Windows Vista. It's kind of like a sort of disk caching mechanism, and it was designed to make the prefetching process in Windows a lot faster. Is it still relevant in Windows 10? I would say it's only still relevant if you don't have a solid state drive for your system drive. I mentioned earlier, getting a solid state drive to replace a spinning hard disk drive for a system drive would make it much faster. However, if you can't commit to that, you can get a USB flash drive or SD card or something like that and use it for what's called ReadyBoost as kind of like a halfway house to improve your performance. Now what you need to do, the device has to be at least 256 megabytes in size. I think you'd be hard pressed to find one smaller than that these days. It has to have a fast access time, so 1 millisecond or less, and a certain amount of throughput for reads and writes. The easiest way to do it though is simply to plug a USB device in. If you then click on the start menu after you've plugged your device in and go to this PC. Now I've got a USB device plugged in here. It's actually a 4 terabyte USB hard drive. So plug your device in and it'll appear in here. Obviously normally you use much smaller ones than that, and they have to be proper flash devices rather than a huge USB hard drive. But if you right click on it and choose properties, you'll see on the properties here there is a ReadyBoost. Now this one says ReadyBoost is not going to be enabled because this computer is fast enough because I've already got a solid state drive. However, if you don't have a solid state drive for your system drive and you plug it in, you'll get one of two screens. You'll either say this one, which shows that it can't be used for ReadyBoost at all because it's not the required performance. So if you say that, the drive you've plugged in can't work with ReadyBoost. However, if you say this option here, this will allow you to use it for ReadyBoost. Now, best thing to do, obviously I'm having to use pictures here rather than video to decide this, is switch it to dedicate this device to ReadyBoost, but also make sure you format it first, right? So format the drive so there's nothing on it and then enable it for ReadyBoost. Once you've enabled for ReadyBoost and you've dedicated it there and given it all the space on that hard drive, then you should see that you get a bit of better performance. Not as good as you would with a solid state drive, but certainly better than you will get with your standard hard disk drive. But obviously that only applies if you don't already have a solid state drive. Now for part 11 of the basics section, I'm just going to run through a few more miscellaneous tips that might help you out in certain situations, and that's before we get to the little advanced bit that I'm going to add on the end. Now first of all, if you have a system that's got a lot of problems with performance and stability, there are a couple of commands you can run that may help repair any issues that are possibly causing these performance problems. I'm going to run it on my virtualized version at the moment. So if you click on the start menu and type in cmd till you find command prompt, but don't launch it by left clicking, right click on it and choose run as administrator and get the admin prompt up. So you've got an admin level command prompt. Type this command in, dism, D-I-S-M, space / online, space / cleanup dash image, space / restore health, right? Run that command and it'll run through the dism command and it'll basically replace any sort of affected files within the image that could potentially be causing you performance issues. It does take quite a while to run, so let it run through with that and come to a satisfactory completion. So that might help if in extreme situations you're seeing performance issues that you otherwise can't account for. Another option you've got, again, if you run cmd and right click and choose run as an administrator, there is a program called the System Files Checker, which is sfc space / scan. Now run the Systems File Checker and it will run through and verify all of the actual system files in your Windows installation and replace any that are potentially changed. To be perfectly honest, I don't often say that make much of a difference, but just as a last resort, if the dism command fails to do anything, you can also try the System File Checker as well. Now, a couple of other miscellaneous tips. I shall just leave that running there, actually, because I don't want to interrupt it and break Windows 10 image. Couple of tips for gamers, right? Gamers specifically. I know a lot of people out there do a lot of gaming. Now, first of all, there is in Windows 10 a thing called game mode. If you go on the start menu and type in game, and you will come up here probably third in the list, normally something that says game mode settings. Make sure you have gaming mode turned on, because that means Windows will optimize your PC for gameplay. So make sure you've got that turned on if you're a gamer. Now, I know lots of games have sort of clients like the Origin client, the Epic client, the Steam client and things like that. So go into things like the Steam client. Bandwidth is very important. You know, bandwidth and network latency is very important to gamers, particularly if you're playing online games. So if you go into your client, whether it be Steam, Origin, Epic, whatever, and see if you can turn off the option so it's not downloading things while you're playing games. I know in Steam you go to Steam, Settings, Downloads, and there's a box you can uncheck that says allow downloads during gameplay. So try and preserve your bandwidth by not having it downloading while your computer's playing a game. Another very good point is use wired networks rather than wireless if you possibly can. I've also seen some suggestions on the internet, people saying you should do something to your registry items called disabling Nagel's algorithm. That isn't a good idea. I wouldn't recommend messing about with the network settings within the registry. Let Windows manage all of that. Don't do any sort of tricks, registry hacks that you've found on the internet. And one final point I really should make with regards to gaming, if I can just see what I'm looking for down here, is to update your graphics card drivers very, very frequently. That's the wrong bit I'm looking for, unfortunately. It's this one here. So whatever graphics card you've got in your gaming machine, I'm assuming if you're a gamer you'll have a graphics card, make sure you've got the software loaded for it, right? Get the manufacturer supported software on your machine. Like I've got a thing here called the GeForce Experience, because I have a GeForce graphics card. Now if you run the manufacturer software in this fashion, what you should see is you should have a screen something like this, and now I've got an option for drivers, and it's telling me here there is a new version of the driver for the graphics card available there. When it comes to stability and performance problems in games, I have two children who play a lot of games. I am always telling them, make sure, as well as doing all your other Windows updates and application updates, get the updates for your graphics card on there as well. That will make a hell of a lot of difference towards the performance and stability of your games. So there you go, a few miscellaneous tips, and I think that just about covers all the tips I've got, but we're just going to quickly, for the very final part, go and talk about some maybe more advanced settings you could do if you wanted to. Now, I think I've pretty much covered all of the basic optimizations that I would normally do when optimizing a Windows 10 system for maximum speed and performance. I'm just going to quickly call out a couple of other little utilities that you might want to use in a bit of a more advanced fashion. Now, be warned that these utilities, as I said, are quite advanced, and they are community tools provided by companies like Microsoft, VMware and Citrix. And if you run them on an image and you don't understand what you're doing and you break it, then neither I nor these companies will be held responsible or provide any support around it. Be very, very careful. If you're going to use them, make sure you've got a full backup before you start doing it. You have been warned about that. And the first tool, just to bring your attention to, if you get Google up and type in auto runs, Microsoft have a tool called auto runs, which is written by a guy called Mark Rasinovich. Go to the web page here, click download. What auto runs does is, if I open it up, and I've already extracted it earlier, so I don't need to extract it again. Right click on the auto runs executable that you've downloaded and choose run as administrator, and you will see this screen here. Now, normally we talked about things that run at startup. The task manager only shows you a limited amount of things that run at startup. Auto runs shows you absolutely everything, and all these tabs along the top tell you where these things are loading up from. So you can go through and remove even more of these, remove as many of them as you want to. As I said, be very careful. Some of them are needed for the system to run, so be very, very careful with what you remove from here. But if you did have something that was starting up repeatedly and causing a drag on your system, auto runs will be the right place to go to find it. Now, mentioned auto runs, also let's mention optimization tools there is a VMware optimization tool called the VMware Operating System Optimization Tool, and you can go to this web page to download it by clicking there. Citrix also have one as well called, first hit on the list there, the Citrix Optimizer. You can download either of these. Both of them you'll need to create an account with the relevant company, but there's nothing to pay. It's free to create an account. You can log in. The download should start, and is it already downloaded? I've probably already got a copy of it from earlier on. Yes, I have. Once it's downloaded, simply extract it as so, and then right click the Citrix Optimizer and choose Run as Administrator. Now, the Citrix Optimizer ships with a load of templates, so various Windows 10 build templates in there, even Windows 7 and things like that. If you go to the template marketplace, you can even download the very latest. If you click download there on the Windows 10 2004 build, which is the latest one, then if you open your template, whichever one it is, you'll be presented with this screen. Now, it has a huge amount of optimizations here, right? And with all of these selected, we've got 146 selected. If I was to click on Optimize now, it would apply all of those optimizations to my machine. Now, I'm not having any performance issues with my machine, so I'd leave it like that. But as I said, if you're going to do this, the right thing to do would be to unselect everything at first, look through each one and try and assess whether you need to do it. So for instance, it will disable Windows services. Read the descriptions of the services, decide if you think you can do without them. It'll remove built-in Windows apps. So have a look at these apps. Do you want to get rid of them or do you need them? Scheduled tasks, again, there's lots of scheduled tasks that do things like updates, but there's also lots of scheduled tasks that you can maybe get rid of. So miscellaneous items there, you know, bits of the operating system disabled, some maintenance tasks, and even some optional components at the end. Read the descriptions very carefully, be very careful, make sure you've got a backup. But if you did want to use this will let you get a bit more advanced down into the guts of your operating system and try and improve the performance even further. As I said, wouldn't recommend it if you've benefited from all of the basic bits we've shown you, but if you did want to get a bit more sort of deeper into the guts of the OS, then those would be the tools to use to do it. And that's all I have. I'm sorry to have talked for so long, but as I said, I watched some videos out there and I thought maybe I needed to just put out there what I think are the best ways to do your Windows 10 device optimization. Hopefully, if you apply some of the basic bits that I've shown you there, you should be able to speed up your Windows 10 system, get better speed, better performance, and hopefully enjoy using it a bit more. Thanks very much for listening. Better than the rest, better than the rest. What the biggest